Hi again, everybody. It's me, Lisa. Welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make a delicious mushroom risotto, and we're going to pair that with a pan-seared sirloin with some mushroom red wine sauce and some asparagus that we've steamed in a little bit of beef stock because water is a little bland. Adding some stock makes everything taste better. So what I'd like to talk to you about today as well is the importance of being prepared for what you're going to be cooking. The French call it mise en place. Basically, it just means everything ready and in its place. So for the risotto, the first thing that we need to do is get our pan warm. Turn that heat on. About a tablespoon of olive oil into the pan. And because I've got everything ready, right now, I'm going to grab my shallots, throw those in. We're just going to soften those up a little bit. Stir that around. We're not really going for the chunks of onion in there. We just want to get that flavor infused into the oil. Add just a pinch of garlic in there. Let that go for just a minute. So in this pot, I have beef stock, which has been simmering with some herbs in it, rosemary, oregano, and thyme, and that's the stock we're going to use as we're adding liquid into the risotto. Risotto is just a really lovely rice dish that's a little bit creamy and still has a little bit of bite from the arborio rice that you'll use. Now that we've got the shallots and garlic soft, we're going to take about 1.25 cups of arborio rice, put it right in there. We want to toast the rice off a little bit. Spread that out and let it go. So we want to toast this rice off a little bit, get it just a little bit of browns. It does take some time, but I can promise you it's worth it. Right now I'm over about a medium heat. You don't want to go too high and scorch it, too low and it makes the rice a little mushy. While this rice is toasting up, I love to cook in a cast iron pan, especially with steaks. If you don't have a grill or it's too cold to grill outside, like it often is in the wintertime here in Alaska, cast iron is the next best alternative. Over here, I've got a sirloin steak that I've just seasoned lightly with a little bit of salt and pepper, and I've left it on the counter to bring it up to room temperature. I'm going to get that pan going. We're going to start it off on about medium-high. As soon as we get a little bit of heat in there, we'll add some oil to the pan. But let's not forget about our rice. Let's give it a quick check. All right, we've got some nice brown bits in there. So the next thing we're going to do is deglaze the pan with a little bit of white wine. When you're cooking with wine, make sure it's a wine that you like to drink as well. As you cook with it, the flavors get a lot more concentrated, so you don't want to choose something that might not be your favorite flavor. Touch the pan. Love that sizzle. Oh, you can see all those nice brown bits rising up. Oh, yet again, I'm really wishing we had smell-o-vision because you guys would be loving how it smells in here. Let that wine cook down for a minute, and then we'll start incorporating the beef stock. We do this in small stages, let the stock simmer out, and then add a little bit more until the rice gets to the consistency that we want. And then we'll throw in some mushrooms and Parmesan cheese to finish it off. All right, we're ready for our first go-around. Remember, this stock has had some herbs simmering in it, so it's going to bring some nice background flavors to it. Get that in there, stir it all around. And we're just going to let this hang out for a few minutes. Wait for all that delicious herb stock to get absorbed. All right, our cast iron is hot. Always hot pan, then oil. Wait for the oil to start to shimmer, and then throw your protein in. All right, here we go. Oh, I love that sizzle. Check on our risotto. Still need another minute or so for that first round of stock to absorb. While we're letting these things hang out, just kind of go over a few more things that we have with us. For the mushroom risotto, I've roughly chopped some baby portobello mushrooms. Those are going to go in right towards the end. Then we'll finish it off with a little bit of shredded Parmesan cheese. You could use any kind of cheese you like. I just find for this meal, it's a really nice flavor combination. Here, I've got some sliced mushrooms that we're going to use in the red wine pan sauce that we'll make in the cast iron pan after the steak is done cooking. And always, always, onions or shallots make a great base for any pan sauce or gravy that you want to make, so have those ready to go as well. Here, to add as a side dish for this, I've got some asparagus. Now, I did blanch it and steam it so that it'll go nice and quickly in the pan. Right here, I've just got some beef stock that we'll bring to a simmer. Toss the asparagus in there to warm it up a little bit, and we'll finish it with a little bit of butter. We're just about ready for our second round of stock into the risotto. Just let that hang out. So, last time we were together, I talked with you about how to check for your steaks to be done. I showed you that really cool thermometer, but we'll practice the touch technique again today. This is a relatively thick steak, so it's going to take a little bit of time on each side to get to a nice medium rare. Oh, look at that crust. All right, our steak is perfectly crusted on both sides. We're going to pull it out of the pan to let it rest because remember, you always want to let your meat rest so that those juices go right back in and keep it nice and moist and tasty. We'll let that hang out over here for a little bit. And now we're going to make a red wine sauce to go over the top of the steak. Grab my spatula. All these crispy bits in the pan are going to make for really tasty gravy. We want to add just a little bit more olive oil, some onions. We've taken the pan down to low because we don't want these things to get brown. We just want them to soften up a little bit and release their flavors. Let those onions go for a minute. Always remembering to keep an eye on our risotto. It's coming along really nicely. Those onions are nice and soft. Just a little bit of garlic. We don't want this to be a super garlic forward dish, but just that nice little flavor, a little bit of spice. And like we did with the risotto and white wine, we're going to deglaze the pan. This time we're using a little bit of red wine. So we're going to use a lot of red wine because this is going to be a sauce to go over the top, not just to deglaze the pan. I'm just going to keep the heat low on that, let this simmer, get nice and thick. It's going to look beautiful when we pour it over the top of the steak. We're ready for a little bit more stock in the risotto. So now we're going to turn the heat on under our stock for the asparagus. Bring that up to temp. We'll throw the asparagus in and get that ready to go. Simmering away. Oh, it smells so good. Another thing you should always remember is don't forget to taste your food. Along the way, you can adjust the seasoning, add a little more salt, add a little more pepper. If you find it's too salty, there's lots of ways we can dial those things back. But definitely taste, taste, taste. All right, so the risotto has gotten its last dose of stock. And what do we want to do? All along the way, taste, taste, taste. What you're looking for is to make sure that the rice is soft in the middle, but not mushy, and that you've got the right amount of salt and pepper in your dish. Oh, so good. All right, the salt's fine. The rice is the perfect texture. Now we're going to throw in the mushrooms and let them soften up a little bit. Mix those through nicely. Now we're going to check on our red wine sauce. Because the wine is a little loose and you really want it to be more of a sauce consistency, we're going to put a little bit of butter in there because butter makes everything better. Let that melt down. So the great thing about pan sauces is you can do them with just about anything. You could do it with stock, you could do it with water and different types of vegetables and just use lots of seasoning. And you can also make it different textures. This is classically going to be a little bit on the loose side, but I like mine a little bit thicker. So if the butter doesn't get me to the thickness that I want, I'll add a little bit of cornstarch dissolved in water just to give it the right viscosity, which is a $64,000 word for it tastes really good and feels good on your tongue. Let that simmer for a minute. Now it's time to put our asparagus into the beef stock. Now most people just steam their vegetables with water, and that's great. I like to steam my vegetables with stock because it adds a lot more dimension to the vegetable. And I also like to cook my vegetables just till they're still a little bit firm in the middle. Mushy vegetables don't taste good. Keep the heat up on that. Now, the red wine sauce is great just like it is, but we want to bring those mushroom flavors over from the risotto to the steak. So the sliced mushrooms that I talked about earlier, they're going to go right in the pan and soften up a little bit. We're going to let these mushrooms soften up a little bit, and this is a perfect opportunity to do what? Taste our food. And folks, never taste with a spoon and then taste again with the same spoon. Always get a fresh spoon. Oh, needs a little bit of salt. And a little more butter. All right. Let that hang out for a minute. And those mushrooms are soft now. It's time to finish this with the Parmesan cheese. You can use as little or as much as you like. I like my risotto cheesy, so I'm going to use about a cup of Parmesan cheese. Mix that all in. All right, we're going to turn the heat down on this one and just let it relax for a few minutes. All right, so it's still a little on the thin side. I am going to go ahead and do the cornstarch trick just because I want it to be a little thicker. So this is about a half a teaspoon of cornstarch and just a couple drips of water. Move the mushrooms off to the side because you want this to go in right over the heat. There we go. Now mix everything back in. Turn that heat down. Okay. Now we're onto this beautiful steak. It's been resting. So I'm going to slice this into strips to make it easier for plating. Oh, look at that. Perfect medium rare on the ends. A couple slices in the middle that are going to be a lovely rare. And then we'll get back to the medium and medium rare towards the other end. All right. Now we're ready to plate things up. Okay. So you can get as fancy or as casual as you like. I'll go just a little bit fancy today. Oh, look at that cheese dripping. I'm going to go risotto down right in the middle of the plate. Ooh. Yum. Come over here and take couple of strips of that steak right over the top. Oh, always want to make sure you've got a clean plate. Going to drizzle just a little bit of this red wine sauce right over the meat. Get a couple of those mushrooms on there. A little bit of asparagus. And there we have it. Cast iron seared sirloin with a red wine mushroom jus over mushroom risotto and asparagus. Enjoy. Okay, and if you have a little bit of a belly like I do right after all that fabulous holiday eating, you can make this a low carb option by taking the risotto out. So we'll just take a couple of these beautiful pieces of steak. A little bit of that pan jus and mushrooms. All right, then we come on over here, double down with the asparagus. And here you have it, a beautiful low-carb option. Well, here you have it, cast iron seared sirloin over a mushroom risotto and a side of asparagus, as well as the low-carb option of just leaving the risotto out. I think it's time to eat. For more on these recipes, click like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me in my kitchen.